Some parents just don't understand how things work in our school.
She thought it was just another ordinary day, until everything turned upside down in seconds. The truth hit harder than anyone expected. Stick around till the end. And if you love powerful stories with real emotion and shocking twists, make sure to subscribe now. You won't want to miss what's next. The hallway buzzed with polite tension, the low murmur of parents exchanging strained pleasantries while teachers peeked from classroom doors. Ridge Hill High's parent-teacher night was as much a social performance as it was academic. Everyone knew it. Eva Carter stood at the end of the hall. She wasn't like the others. At 24, Eva looked too young to be a parent here, and everyone noticed. Some whispered. Others gawked. One woman even mistook her for a student and asked, "Shouldn't you be in the gym?" with a saccharine smile that dripped with judgment. Eva didn't flinch. Her grip on her purse tightened slightly, but her face remained composed, unreadable. She wore no makeup, her hair tied back in a frizzy bun, her black hoodie stretched at the seams. Her sneakers, scuffed and silent, stood firmly on the school's polished floor. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here for her son, Jace. At just 9, Jace was already in the school's accelerated program. Bright, inquisitive, always asking questions, always reading. Eva had homeschooled him for 2 years before finally enrolling him in Ridge Hill. She had read the rankings. The school was one of the best in the district. But no ranking warned her about the people inside. Number 23, a teacher called. Eva stepped forward. A mother in designer heels clicked past her, giving her a side glance like Eva smelled of poverty. Maybe she did. She had come straight from her 3rd shift at the diner. No time to change. Inside the classroom, Ms. Howard sat behind her desk, hands clasped, polite but disinterested. "Miss Carter," she said, as if tasting something bitter. "Mrs. Carter," Eva corrected softly. "Eva's fine." Ms. Howard raised an eyebrow. "Of course. Please sit." The meeting was supposed to last 10 minutes. It went only 5. Eva listened carefully as Ms. Howard summarized Jace's academic achievements with robotic efficiency, but there was no warmth in her tone. "No pras. No inquiriment." When Eva tried to ask questions about Jace's social adjustment, Ms. Howard glanced at the clock and replied, "He's different, quiet, reserved, perhaps a reflection of his home environment." There it was. Eva's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. She took the blow silently. Ms. Howard continued, "Look, I'll be honest. We don't often have students from your background in our gifted program. It's a big adjustment for everyone." "Excuse me," Eva asked calmly. "Please don't take offense. We simply expect a certain level of parental involvement. Many of our parents are professionals, doctors, engineers, lawyers. We find that children thrive when education is supported with the right structure." Eva stood up. "Jace reads at a 10th grade level. He builds his own computer games. He's the only child in his class who asked for extra math work." Ms. Howard gave a polite, tired smile. "And I hope he continues to thrive. But don't be surprised if you find the pace here a little overwhelming." Eva walked out, not saying another word. As she stepped back into the hallway, she felt the burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let it out. Not here, not among these people. She walked past a group of mothers whispering by the water fountain. One of them laughed just a little too loudly as Eva passed. The sound bounced off the linoleum floor and struck like a slap. They didn't know her story. They didn't know that she had Jace at 15, that her parents kicked her out, that she worked as a waitress all through high school and got her GED at night while breastfeeding, that she fed her son on instant noodles for months until she got promoted to manager, that she took free online college courses at midnight when Jace was asleep. They didn't know that her son was her greatest achievement. They just saw a teen mom in adult clothes. By the time Eva reached the parking lot, she was shaking. Not from sadness. From rage. A controlled, boiling fury that wrapped itself around every word Ms. Howard had said, every smirk she saw in the hallway, every cruel assumption. She turned the key in her old Toyota and drove away in silence. The hum of the engine was the only sound as Jace slept in the back seat, his small head resting against the window. She looked at him in the rearview mirror. His hair was messy, his shoelaces untied, his backpack half-zipped. But his eyes lit up when he talked about science and space and time travel. She wouldn't let this place dull that light. Not ever. The next day, Eva arrived at Ridge Hill unannounced. She walked straight into the principal's office. Principal Edmonds was a tall, gray-haired man with a voice that carried authority. He blinked when he saw her. "I need 10 minutes," she said. "I'm sorry. Do you have an appointment?" "No," Eva replied, "but I have a point to make." He motioned her in, clearly expecting some minor parental grievance. Instead, Eva pulled out a folder. "These are Jace's scores," she said, sliding it across his desk. "These are the assignments he's done at home. Projects, essays, coding exercises. That's a copy of the robotics competition he won last year. Here's a letter from the community college where he audited a course. He's 9. The principal skimmed through the papers, his brow lifting. "I'm not here to beg for acceptance," Eva said. "I'm here to tell you that your staff needs to stop assuming a child's worth based on what their parent looks like." He looked up, startled. "I may not wear heels or drive a Tesla, but I raised a genius. And whether your school nurtures that genius or stifles him, it's on you." She stood up. "And next time a teacher decides to judge me, tell her to read his file first." She walked out before he could reply. That night, Eva worked a double shift. On her break, she took out her laptop. She opened up a new document. It was time to change the game. Not just for Jace, for every kid like him, and every mom like her. She began researching educational startups, property investment, charter school models. Every break, every late night, every spare second was poured into learning. Watching lectures, reading articles, sending emails. She made a new budget, cut costs, picked up extra hours. Her landlord raised the rent the following month. So she moved out of her one-bedroom and into a shared basement with Jace. He didn't complain. He just asked if he could paint the wall near his bed with planets. She bought him glow-in-the-dark stars instead. 2 years passed. Eva saved every cent. She took a loan, applied for a grant, partnered with a friend from college who had become a property lawyer. And then one day, she saw a listing. It was Ridge Hill High School's old West Wing building. The district had voted to close it due to lack of funding. The price was half of what she expected. She made a call, then another, then a third. 6 weeks later, she signed the papers. Eva Carter, a former teen mom who once cried in the parking lot of Ridge Hill High, was now the legal owner of the school's Old West Wing. And that was only the beginning. The Old West Wing of Ridge Hill High was a forgotten place. Abandoned lockers lining the corridor, chalkboards covered in layers of dust, flickering lights that hadn't been turned on in years. But to Eva, it was a blank canvas, a battlefield, a second chance. She stood in the middle of the main hallway on a freezing January morning, bundled in 2 coats, fingers numb, but heart blazing. The echo of her footsteps on the linoleum sounded different now. Not like a visitor, but like a storm. "Welcome home," she whispered to herself. The papers were signed, the transfer complete. Eva Carter, high school dropout turned single mom, now a part of the very institution that once sneered at her. She wasn't just going to restore the building. She was going to rebuild the system. The first week was chaos. Eva brought Jace along during weekends, and together, they scraped paint off the walls and pulled nails out of rotted furniture. Eva didn't have the money to hire a full crew yet, but she had determination. She cleaned toilets herself, replaced ceiling tiles one by one, and YouTubed everything she didn't know how to do. Word started to spread, quietly at first. A few curious locals peeked in, offering help. Then more came. A retired math teacher, a college dropout who knew how to install drywall, a single father who offered to repaint rooms in exchange for future enrollment for his daughter. And the building began to change. So did Eva. Gone was the shy woman clutching her purse outside classrooms. She now walked through the halls in paint-stained boots, blueprint in hand, vision in her eyes. The old staff at Ridge Hill High began to hear about it too. Principal Edmonds read the article in the local paper with furrowed brows. Former teen mom opens education center in old school wing. He called a meeting the next morning. "What's she planning?" one teacher asked. "She's not qualified," said another. "No credencials." No degree, just a building and a dream. But dreams, when fueled by vengeance and vision, become unstoppable. Eva called her center North Spire. The name symbolized a direction and a climb, everything the system failed to give kids like Jace. She filed the paperwork to establish it as a nonprofit learning hub, combining homeschooling flexibility with modern teaching tools and mentorship. Her model was different. No uniforms, no rows of desks, no robotic curriculum. Each child had a mentor. Each subject was connected to real-world applications. Coding projects were linked to community issues. Math was taught through architecture and design. Literature was explored through debate, film, and performance. Eva even began offering night classes for young parents, free childcare included. But her boldest decision came when she opened applications to Ridge Hill students. At first, only a handful dared. Among them was a boy named Leo, a quiet, artistic kid who had been labeled difficult by Ridge Hill staff. Eva sat with him and his mother the first day. He likes to paint, his mom said, but his teacher says he should focus more on test prep. Eva smiled. He'll paint here. A lot. Leo's mother broke down in tears. By the end of the first month, North Spire had 38 students and 6 volunteer instructors. Eva slept in the staff room some nights. She ran the books, managed the curriculum, fixed the broken pipes, and sent handwritten progress reports to every parent. No email templates, no automation. Just ink and sincerity. She was tired beyond words, but she was alive in a way she had never been before. Jace thrived in the new environment. He designed a digital library for the center, coded a scheduling app, and began tutoring kids 3 years older than him. Mom, he said one night, you made a school out of nothing. She ruffled his hair. No, baby. I made a school out of everything they said I was. One afternoon, a black SUV pulled into the North Spire parking lot. Eva recognized the Ridge Hill crest on the door. Principal Edmonds stepped out, suit sharp, expression unreadable. He walked through the front doors slowly, glancing at the murals on the walls, art painted by students. Music from a student-built audio system played gently in the background. Eva was in the middle of a parent orientation when she spotted him. She finished her talk, excused herself politely, and walked toward him. Principal Edmonds, she said calm. Miss Carter, he replied, adjusting his tie. I wanted to see it for myself. You've seen it now, she said. He looked around. You've done more than I expected. Eva folded her arms. More than you thought possible for someone like me? He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured toward the classrooms. I recognize some of those students. Former Ridge Hill students. Some left on their own, Eva said. Some weren't welcome back. Principal Edmonds nodded slowly. And what's your long-term goal? Eva looked at him directly. To replace systems that never serve kids like mine. Not just here. Everywhere. He studied her a moment longer, then extended a hand. Good luck. She didn't take it. You should offer that to the kids you overlooked. He lowered his hand and turned to leave. As he reached the door, he paused. Ms. Carter, do you remember what MS? Howard said about your son? That he wouldn't fit in. I remember every word. Eva said. She resigned last week, he said, and walked out. Eva stood in silence. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just went back to work. 3 months later, North Spire received its first official partnership grant from a tech startup in the city. The funding came with mentorships, software, and a new robotics lab. Enrollment doubled. Eva hired her first full-time staff. She was invited to speak at a local education summit. Her panel was last, sandwiched between PhDs and school board members. When it was her turn, the audience barely looked up at first, until she began to speak. I became a mother at 15. I was told I ruined my life, that my child would fall behind, that I had nothing to offer school. So I built my own. Silence, then applause, then standing ovation. But Eva didn't do it for that moment. She did it for every girl who sat in a parent-teacher meeting, being told she wasn't enough. She did it for every kid who felt invisible because of their zip code, their accent, their shoes. She did it because systems forget, but people remember. And now, people were beginning to remember her name. Eva Carter, founder of North Spire, mother of Jace, breaker cycles. And she was only getting started. By the fall of the following year, North Spire wasn't just a learning center anymore. It was a movement. What started in the cracked west wing of a forgotten school was now a fully operational, accredited alternative education institution with waiting lists stretching 3 districts long. Parents called daily. Reporters showed up weekly. And Eva Carter? She still arrived every morning at 6 and stayed until the last child left. Only now, she wore tailored jackets over her worn hoodies. Her boots were still scuffed, but intentionally. Her eyes still carried exhaustion. But now was the exhaustion of success, not survival. And yet, despite her meteoric rise, some people still hadn't changed. The Ridge Hill School Board, for example. They had watched in silence as Eva's project gained traction. At first, they dismissed her as a passing fad. Then, as enrollment numbers grew, they started attending meetings she wasn't invited to. Behind closed doors, they whispered about permits, zoning issues, and regulations. It wasn't long before Eva received a formal letter. Notice of review, North Spire Educational Facility. The letter claimed they were investigating unverified teaching credentials, overcrowding, and improper use of educational property. Eva read it without blinking. Then she picked up the phone. She called every parent whose child was enrolled, every teacher, every volunteer. She explained the situation clearly, calmly, and without panic. Then she called a press conference. It was held on the North Spire front lawn under the banner. Let the children speak. Students gave speeches. Parents shared stories. Jace read a poem titled, Not Broken, Just Bent. The media ate it up. Eva stood last. No teleprompter. No script. Just truth. They said we weren't qualified. That we were too young, too poor, too different. But these kids, they're not statistics. They're not budget lines. They are the future. And if we let bureaucracy steal that from them, then shame on all of us. The crowd exploded. The footage went viral within 48 hours. The school board backpedaled furiously. The review was suspended. But Eva had already decided they would never be able to threaten her again. So she filed for charter status. It was an uphill battle. Paperwork, interviews, financial disclosures. Late nights, legal meetings, more stress than she thought her body could handle. But Eva had grown past fear, and she wasn't alone anymore. One evening, after another 12-hour day, she found Jace asleep on the couch with blueprints and math sheets scattered around him. He had designed a new science lab for North Spire's second floor, complete with 3D printer integration and solar lighting. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "We're going to build it." She meant it. By winter, the state approved the charter. North Spire officially became a private public hybrid school with government recognition and community control. The day the charter papers arrived, Eva framed them and hung them beside the first letter she ever got from Ridge Hill, where Ms. Howard warned Jace might struggle to fit in. The contrast was poetic. With the charter came grants. With grants came renovations. And with renovations came visitors, lots of them, city officials, nonprofit directors, former students, even some Ridge Hill teachers, tired of the rigid system, applied to join. Eva didn't hold grudges. She held people accountable. But not everyone was there to celebrate. One rainy Thursday afternoon, as Eva walked into a community meeting in town hall, she spotted a familiar face. Samantha Huxley. Eva remembered her well. Polished, sharp-tongued, and always perfectly condescending. Back on that first parent-teacher night, Samantha was the one who had whispered something to her friend just as Eva walked by, then laughed as if Eva couldn't hear. She wore the same expression now. Samantha rose from her seat. "I'd like to ask a question," she said. "With North Spire expanding so quickly, how do you intend to maintain standards? My son was in the gifted program at Ridge Hill. We all know that excellence requires pedigree." There was again that word, pedigree. Eva didn't flinch. She walked slowly to the front of the room and took the mic. North Spire doesn't believe excellence is inherited. It's nurtured. It's built through compassion, resilience, and access. Your son is welcome, Samantha. But he'll have to earn his place, just like the kids whose moms clean hotel rooms. The room fell silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Samantha sat down, her face pale. That night, Eva received over 100 new applications. North Spire opened its second wing in early spring, and Eva finally did something she'd never thought possible. She went back to college, online, part-time, majoring in education and organizational leadership. Not because she needed a degree to prove her worth, but because she wanted to build something even bigger. Her vision was no longer limited to one building. She imagined North Spires across the state. She imagined a national model. She imagined mentorship centers for teen parents, after-school hubs for underfunded districts, scholarship programs funded not by corporations, but by community partnerships. And she was already drafting the framework. One day, while attending an education tech expo, she bumped into an investor who had heard about North Spire through his daughter's blog. "You're the Eva Carter," he said. "The one who bought the school building?" Eva smiled. "That's me. I'd like to talk about expanding your model." They shook hands. 3 months later, Eva flew on a plane for the first time in her life. She presented the North Spire blueprint to a panel of venture philanthropists. When she walked off stage, a woman in a blue suit stopped her. "I was a teen mom too," the woman said. "And today, I'm a CEO. You just reminded me why I started." They hugged. That night, Eva cried in her hotel room, not from sadness, but from knowing that this was just the beginning. And yet, despite all the success, all the recognition, Eva never missed a single parent-teacher meeting at North Spire. She sat in the same uncomfortable plastic chair, listened to the teachers talk about Jace's progress, asked thoughtful questions, took notes. The only difference was, now she wasn't mocked. She was admired. She wasn't underestimated. She was studied. She wasn't invisible. She was a leader. And Jace? He was thriving. One afternoon, he came home beaming. "Mom, they picked my project for the City Expo. I'm building a robotic hand that responds to nerve signals." Eva sat down slowly, stunned. "Where did you even learn that?" He shrugged. "I read about it in the North Spire library. Ms. Dana gave me a few science journals. I thought I'd try it." Eva just looked at him, not as a child born out of struggle, not as a boy everyone doubted, but as proof. Proof that love, opportunity, and belief could rewrite any story, even hers. The grand auditorium of North Spire's new building was nothing like the dusty halls Eva once wandered. It gleamed with polished floors, glass-paneled doors, interactive whiteboards, and student-painted murals that stretched across the ceiling in wild bursts of color and imagination. And today it was packed, not with students or staff, but with donors, partners, superintendents, mayors. Eva stood backstage, her palms slightly clammy, but her heart calm. It had been 6 years since she bought that condemned West Wing with everything she had. 6 years of tears, failures, triumphs, doubt, grit, and miracles. She had built something no one saw coming. And now, she was launching it nationwide. North Spire was expanding. 3 new locations already in development across the state, and 9 more in planning phases. Eva Carter, the girl who was once mocked for bringing a baby to a parent-teacher conference, was now the keynote speaker at the National Summit for Education Equity. She adjusted her mic, and she walked out. The audience stood and clapped as she approached the podium. But Eva didn't speak right away. She let the moment breathe. Then, slowly, she began. 6 years ago, I stood in a hallway not far from here. I was alone, exhausted, and completely invisible to the people around me. I had no title, no degrees, just a son, a brilliant, curious boy, and a heart full of fire. She paused. They laughed at me, dismissed me. One teacher even implied my son wouldn't thrive because of me, but she was wrong. A ripple of murmurs moved through the room. "See, I've learned that credentials don't define character. That money doesn't guarantee compassion. That real intelligence isn't about how many books you've read. It's about what you do with the knowledge once you've read them." More applause. She continued. North Spire was never just about education. It was about rewriting the rules, creating a space where young moms aren't looked at like mistakes, where underfunded kids aren't told to be realistic, where every child, regardless of background, gets to build their future without shame. Silence, then roaring applause. Afterward, Eva was swarmed. Photographs, interviews, invitations to speak at Ivy League panels. She handled each with humility, but inside, she still felt the same fire. Not for fame, not for praise, but for change. She returned to her office late that evening. Jace was sitting on the floor, headphones in, typing code on his laptop. "You didn't have to wait," she said, smiling. He looked up and grinned. "Had to see if they gave you a standing ovation." "They did. Told you." He returned to his screen. "Check this out," he said. "I'm building a prototype AI that can help kids with reading disabilities adapt their texts in real time. It'll read the tone, vocabulary level, even visual cues, and personalize it instantly." Eva blinked. "You're building that now?" "Yep. I want to test it on the new North Spire campuses next year." Eva sat across from him, stunned. "You're 17, Jace." "I know. Cool, right?" She laughed. Not just from joy, but from pride. From awe. From the surreal truth that the very boy they once said wouldn't fit in was now developing tools that would change how millions of kids learned. And she had front row seats. That night, she opened an email she'd been ignoring for weeks. Subject: TEDx conference invitation, Eva Carter. She clicked. "We'd be honored to have you headline." Theme: breaking the cycle. She stared at it, then hit reply. Accepted. Over the next months, she worked on new curriculum blueprints with tech leaders and neurodiversity specialists. North Spire began enrolling refugee children, offering translation services, mental health counseling, and trauma-informed teaching practices. The model worked. Retention soared. Student engagement tripled. And major publications began calling North Spire the most promising educational innovation of the decade. But Eva didn't let it go to her head. Instead, she visited every single classroom once a week. She sat with kids during lunch. She helped tie shoes. She stayed late to counsel a girl who confessed she was pregnant and scared. And when that girl cried in her arms, Eva whispered the same words she once needed to hear. "You didn't ruin anything. You just started a different story." Jace graduated from North Spire at the top of his class and was offered a full ride to multiple universities. But instead, he took a gap year to help expand the school his mother built. Together, they traveled to rural towns and underserved neighborhoods. They spoke at juvenile centers. They opened mobile North Spire classrooms in food deserts. They built hope from bricks, code, and courage. Years passed. Eva never stopped moving. Until one day, she received a letter in the mail. Handwritten, cream-colored. It read, "Dear Ms. Carter, you probably don't remember me. My name is Leo. I was one of your first students at North Spire. Back then, I was quiet, lonely, lost. But you told my mom that I could paint. You gave me walls to paint on, paints to use, and a reason to show up every day. Today, I'm graduating art school. My final project is a mural called North Spire, of you, Jace, and the original school wing. I wanted you to know that you saved my life." Eva wept reading it, not from sadness, but from knowing that her work, the struggle, the sleepless nights, the rejections, the pain, it all mattered. And then one day, a knock came at her office door. A familiar voice. "Eva Carter?" She looked up. It was Ms. Howard, older now, less sharp around the eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Ms. Howard said, "but I came to see it. I heard what you built, and I had to know." Eva nodded slowly. "Would you like a tour?" Ms. Howard looked shocked. "Are you serious?" "Of course. North Spire is for everyone, even people who doubted us." They walked the halls together, past murals, music rooms, code labs, meditation rooms, sensory play areas, and in every corner, laughter, questions, and light. By the end, Ms. Howard stood silently at the exit, tears in her eyes. "I was wrong," she whispered. "About you. About everything." Eva placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I was never trying to prove you wrong," she said. "I was trying to prove them right. The kids. The moms. The ones you gave up on." And then, Eva turned to leave. She had a meeting upstairs with architects designing the next North Spire. This one would be in Chicago. Years later, when North Spire had gone international and Jace had become a global educational innovator, a documentary was made about the movement. In the final scene, a clip played of that first parent-teacher night. A grainy photo of Eva holding Jace's hand, standing alone in the hallway. Narration played softly. They mocked her at parent-teacher night. She bought the building. Then, she built an empire of hope from the ashes of their doubt. And beneath that image, one simple line. Eva Carter, founder of North Spire, mother, world builder. The world was shifting. 10 years after that fateful parent-teacher night, Eva Carter was no longer just a headline or a local hero. She was a chapter in educational reform textbooks. North Spire had grown into a global initiative, 41 schools across 6 countries, each uniquely tailored to the local community, but all rooted in one unshakable belief. Every child deserves to be seen. Eva's face was on magazine covers. Her talks were watched by millions. World leaders quoted her, but Eva never stopped showing up for morning check-ins with kids. Never stopped sweeping the floor when needed. Never stopped remembering who she was. A girl no one expected anything from. A teen mom mocked in a hallway. Now, she was helping rewrite the stories of tens of thousands of children whose lives would never be the same because one woman refused to sit down and accept what the world told her she was worth. One of those children was Zara. She had joined North Spire's Brooklyn campus at age 11. Silent, withdrawn, she had bounced between shelters with her mom after fleeing an abusive home. She barely spoke for 6 weeks. Teachers were worried, but Eva visited one day, saw her sketching silently in a notebook, and sat beside her. "You see things other people miss," Eva said softly. "That's a gift. May I see?" Zara hesitated, then turned the page. It was a perfect pencil sketch of the North Spire building, from an angle no one else ever noticed. "I want to draw places where people feel safe," Zara whispered. Years later, she became a licensed architect. Her first completed building? North Spire's 25th campus in Johannesburg, designed with open-air murals, skylights, and hidden reading corners for anxious children. Eva attended the ribbon cutting in person. As Zara gave her a tour, she turned and asked, "Do you remember what you said to me that day?" Eva smiled. "No, but I remember how you looked. Like you had a world inside you that was waiting to be built." Zara beamed. Across continents, North Spire's model evolved. Culturally responsive learning, trauma-informed counseling, parent support wings, community co-ops. It wasn't just a school, it was a way of life. But with growth came challenges. Governments began to scrutinize the expansion. Political opponents framed Eva as disruptive. Public schools, worried about declining enrollment, accused North Spire of poaching talent. Eva listened, then invited their principals to collaborate. "Let's build bridges, not walls," she said in one televised debate. When asked if she had ambitions to run for office, she laughed. "I'm not a politician. I'm a builder. I build spaces where kids become who they're meant to be." But then came the heartbreak. Eva's mother, who had never once spoken to her since the day she got pregnant at 15, reached out. Stage for cancer. No family left but Eva and Jace. Eva hesitated. The same woman who kicked her out? Who said she was dead to her? But Jace, ever the peacemaker, said, "You don't have to forgive her, Mom. But maybe she needs to see who you became." Eva drove 4 hours to the hospice. When she walked in, her mother barely recognized her. Then whispered, I watched your TED Talk. I kept a photo of you and Jace. I was wrong. I was afraid. I didn't know how to love the version of you that didn't fit the mold." Eva didn't cry. She sat beside her mother's bed and told her stories of the kids she'd helped, the lives she'd changed, and the girl she used to be, who cried herself to sleep in a shelter with a baby on her chest and dreams in her heart. Her mother passed 2 weeks later, holding her hand. That moment broke something and built something new. Eva understood then that healing didn't always come with justice. Sometimes it came with closure. After the funeral, Eva took a year-long sabbatical, her first break in a decade. She left the day-to-day operations in the hands of her now-grown North Spire alumni. She traveled quietly, visiting schools, shelters, refugee camps, rural towns, collecting stories. When she returned, she brought with her a new plan. The North Spire Collective, a network of mobile schools on wheels, reaching kids who lived off the grid, in forests, in deserts, in slums, on borders. With solar-powered buses, satellite connectivity, and multilingual educators, North Spire went where others wouldn't. And Eva? She turned her attention to teen mothers. She opened the North Spire Haven Homes, boarding houses where pregnant teens or young mothers could stay, learn, and raise their babies in dignity. With on-site healthcare, education, therapy, and life coaching, it became one of her proudest creations. One day, she visited a haven in Detroit. A 16-year-old girl named Lena ran up to her with a toddler on her hip. "Ms. Carter," she shouted, breathless. He just said his first word. Eva knelt. "What was it?" Lena smiled. "Book." Eva laughed through tears. In her private time, Eva started journaling. Jace, now 25, encouraged her to publish. So she did. Her memoir, The Hallway, hit #1 on bestseller lists in 37 countries. It began not with triumph, but with this. "I was 15, cold and terrified. My baby cried. I didn't know if I'd eat that night. Everyone said I ruined my life, but I hadn't ruined it. I'd rewritten it." The book ended with a dedication. To the girl they laughed at. "You won." On her 50th birthday, North Spire hosted a global live stream event. A decade of dignity. Messages poured in from across the globe. Students, parents, celebrities, teachers. And then came a video message from the President of the United States. Eva Carter didn't just build a school. She built a revolution. She taught us that being underestimated is a superpower, and that no child should ever pay for the limits of our imagination. Eva sat at the back of the auditorium, unnoticed. She didn't want the spotlight. She just wanted the kids to shine. After the event, Jace walked over. "You ready to rest?" he asked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Eva looked around at the buzzing crowd of students, some speaking in sign language, others in different languages, others sketching inventions or quoting poetry. She smiled. "Not yet." "But one day," he asked. "One day," she said. "But first, I want to buy the rest of that school." Jace laughed. "The whole building?" "No, the whole district." And she meant it, because even though she had turned her pain into power and her shame into strength, Eva Carter knew there were still hallways full of girls being whispered about, still classrooms full of invisible brilliance, still systems begging to be broken. And as long as that was true, she would keep building. One wing, one life, one impossible dream at a time. Final line. And in every North Spire school around the world, there now hangs a single photo of a teen mom holding her son's hand in a hallway full of judgment, and beneath it, carved into bronze. She was never the problem. She was the blueprint.